don't know if the ring light is a bit too much with my window open. I'm recording this in the middle of the day for the first time ever, but we were just going to go with it. The Nintendo 64 was my first video game console ever, with Super Mario 64 being my first game ever. I wasn't able to beat the PlayStation in terms of sales and only had a few hundred games made for it, but it nonetheless revolutionized the way we play 3D games today, and a big part of that was due to this colorful, janky-looking controller. When Nintendo 64 games were made for the Nintendo Switch as part of the Nintendo Switch Online application, Nintendo remade the Nintendo 64 controller that was available for purchase for people who had an account through the online service. I forgot to turn on the games, and now it's just on there. We're going to pretend it has always been on. The controller is obviously meant to be used for games on this service, but it's also fully compatible with any Switch game released for the system, which means the controller can be used for any non-Nintendo 64 games. So after getting this controller for myself, I wanted to see how well other Switch games can be used for it. There are some limitations with this though, mainly just being the lack of an X and Y button. You only have the A and B button here. The right stick is instead controlled by the C buttons, and there's also no thumbstick buttons. The ZR button is instead this little nub up here on the top of the controller. It's a little weird, but it does have both functioning ZL and L buttons as well as the R button. There's also no select button, which some of the games can probably use for menus, but overall, most of the buttons are here. There's also no gyroscope involved, so it was interesting to see how many games actually work with this thing. I don't have some of the big releases like Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild, but I do have some good games here. I'm going to see how many of these games in my collection actually can use the Nintendo 64. Whoops. Yeah, so that's just all on the ground now. Here. I'll be covering these games based on how well they use the Nintendo 64 controller, from those that have greater difficulty with it to those that will have no real problem at all. So, let's go. We're starting with a duo of games that can't recognize the N64 controller at all, the Pokemon Let's Go games. Let's Go will just refuse to even accept the N64 controller, which means we can't even start the game. They only recognize a select number of controllers, being one of the two Joy-Cons, the Switch itself in handheld mode, or the Pokeball controller. It'd probably be interesting to see how compatible that controller is with other Switch games, but that's an experiment for another day. I did try to load up a file with the controller it did recognize, and then go to the home menu to switch to the N64 controller, but the game immediately disconnected the controller, just leaving our trainer standing in the middle of the field, unable to do anything. Pokemon Let's Go is impossible to play with the N64 controller. Switching over to Dragon Quest Builders 2, we're immediately told that the X button is used to place or use items, which is, not great. But maybe we won't have to build anything in this building game. We make our character, getting really woken up, and then go back to bed. For the most part, we can interact with things just fine, though we can't place or use anything. So as long as we aren't locked in a tutorial that requires us to press the X button, we should be fine. Oh, yeah, so the only way to progress the tutorial is to eat this kelp we were given, and that's done by pressing the X button. The kelp is just going to sit in our menu, and our poor girl is just going to have to starve. Oh well, nothing left to do now but kill ourselves. Press X while running to shield surf. Well, I know what we're not going to do. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity I wasn't as fond of as much as Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, but let's see how well it works with the N64 controller. Right, so the X and Y buttons are what triggers our basic attacks, which means Link can only just stand in the middle of this board and take the hits as they come. The A button would use special attacks, and we don't have that meter up right now. On a new file, you can't make it anywhere, but on a finished file, we have access to runes and wands, and we can only use some of those. The runes do nothing here, but we can use the lightning wand, though we can only use it a certain number of times. Once it's exhausted, well, we've done all we can do. Outside of battle, we can do things like change characters, weapons, and costumes, but we can't look at the pre-battle info or even open the system menu to save our game or leave the battle. There's no way to change the controls either. Overall, Age of Calamity continues to not be as good as its predecessor in my opinion, and it is impossible to play with an N64 controller. Metroid Prime Remastered is the game that made me want to do this video in the first place. I thought it'd be funny to play the game with an N64 controller, and it's actually almost functional. You can shoot, jump, aim, lock on, and scan as normal. But we can't use our missiles, as they're through the X button, which is definitely going to be a problem later on. We enter the space station, shoot some space bugs, and find a space hole we can't get into. Another function we're locked out of is the morph ball, which is done with the Y button. The good news is this hole just leads to the map room, which we don't exactly need, so hopefully we don't need to use the morph ball again anytime soon. Ah crap. Yep, Samus's progress is fully impeded by this pile of rubble with no other way around it. I tried to see if I could change the controls in the game settings, but I can only alternate between set controller schemes, and none of them offer a way around this. Unfortunately, Metroid Prime cannot be played with a Nintendo 64 controller. From one great GameCube game to another, we have the remaster of Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. Once we arrive in Rogueport, things flow pretty normally. You can get eaten by piranhas, hammer civilians, and enter a battle with the space mob. You know, normal stuff. We can take down Lord Crump just fine. The controls for jumping and hammering are pretty simple and translate well to the N64 controller. Once that mess is done, we are taken to Rogueport Square, where we engage in conversation with Goombella. After explaining the situation about Peach and the magical map, Goombella offers to join us on the search, and we're taken to a tutorial that tells us Goombella can tell us about other people by pressing the X button. Okay, whatever, we don't need to use Goombella's ability to get through the game, so as long as we're not locked in a tutorial that requires us to hit the X button, oh come on. I don't remember if this is in the GameCube original or not, but the Switch version locks us in the screen until we press the X button, which we obviously cannot do. So we're just going to be stuck here in this pink void for all eternity. Kirby Star Allies is a game I have not played at all. In fact, getting footage for this video was the first time I ever put the game into the system. So let's load it up and see what we got here. Oh, cool, new characters. More characters, okay. Okay, I get it. Why are there so many characters? Apparently there's a hub world to this game that we can run around in with no issues. Jumping into a level, we're directed to learn the Kirby basics of jumping and consuming others to gain their abilities. Beyond the door ahead, we're ambushed by an enemy and Kirby starts freaking out. And then Kirby freezes, locking us in another tutorial that requires us to hit the X button. We're expected to hit the X button to turn enemies into allies, but we can't do that, so we're just stuck here. Kirby is me right now. I went back through the menu to see if I could change the controls, but the options don't change the way we make allies. I did find that I could turn off friend movies though, so I went back into the level with this change. The cutscenes still played out, but I also found you could skip these cutscenes, which means we are able to continue and have a new friend to boot. The game wants us to make more allies, but nah. We also are not capable of changing our ability at will, so outside of a few instances, we're stuck with what we got, which is fine. Partway through the level, we reach this cork with 2 levers on it, which our friend is more than willing to help pull. I was able to make it through a good portion of the level, even though I have to pass on some secrets, so it looks like we might actually get a clearer level here. Oh, dang it. Yep, it's another cork, but this time it requires 4 people to pull. And since we don't have those numbers, this is where the adventure stops. But you know what does have numbers? The subscribe button. Press it and the number goes up. It's science. Up next is another game I haven't played yet, Sonic Colors Ultimate. My backlog is too big and I'm too slow. Not as slow as these loading times, though. The game just throws you right into the first level with no tutorial, which is great for us, as we haven't had a great track record with them lately. I don't know what the X or Y buttons would do, but we don't need them apparently. Sonic's handling is a little weird, but I was able to get through the first level just fine. Finally, progress. The second level isn't too difficult either. While I may have some trouble with a jump now and then, we can clear the second level as well and be welcomed to the world map. At this point, I'm a little worried as I have yet to use the Wisp abilities, and I didn't know what button would use them, but once I found a Wisp, the game tells us the abilities are activated with the R button. Awesome, we might be able to actually clear this game. Oh, come on. Yep, turns out the only thing capable of stopping a supersonic hedgehog is a solid wall we can't slide under. I tried to see if I could maybe glitch my way through with the homing reticle or something to hit the spring behind it, but nothing worked. Oh well, we had a good run at least. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020 is a little weird when it comes to the N64 controller. It's really a collection of minigames, so it's hit or miss if they work out. Some games are simple enough, like the track and field ones. Others, like javelin throwing, require abilities we don't have. It's a good thing no one can be in the real Olympics with a lack of ability, right? The game's story mode is something of a mixed bag as well. Mario, Sonic, Toad, Bowser, and Eggman are sucked into a Tokyo 1964 Olympics video game, and Luigi and Tails need to find out how to get them out. The story takes you through the collection of games, many of them requiring the X or Y buttons. At first, this sounds like the game may be impossible to clear. However, if you're struggling and can't beat the game after 3 tries, you are allowed to skip it and continue the story as if you did beat it. This means Mario and Sonic is technically clearable even if you can't actually play many of the games it offers. Whatever, a win is a win, we'll take it. And now for the black sheep in my collection, Cobra Kai, the Karate Kid saga continues. I really liked the Cobra Kai series on Netflix, and even if you don't know the story of Karate Kid, I highly recommend watching it. That said, I do not recommend this game. It's an arcade beat-em-up, but the controls and physics are very janky, even when I'm not limiting myself to the Nintendo 64 controller. Despite that, the game seems to still be fully playable with the controller. We're told the X and Y buttons are for punching and kicking, yet the R button is capable of both of these depending on your inputs. It's funny when you're just slapping people in the vending machine. You can still roll with the A button and jump with the B button, and you can even do a super move if you charge it up. There's this one Shoryuken move that requires the Y button to use, but it's not really necessary. I was able to play through the first level well enough. There's a few cases where the game tells us commands we can't do, such as stunning enemies or swinging items, but we aren't obligated to use them and can clear the fights just fine. Even moves I can do, like picking up food, aren't exactly clear sometimes. That's fine, I didn't want that hot dog anyway. After slamming people into cars, kicking chairs at people, and Bowser throwing people, Johnny Lawrence shows up and we can just swap between him and Miguel just fine. This is overall more of a funny game than a fun one. The controls feel unresponsive sometimes and the fights are slow and clunky. I didn't feel like playing past the first level, but it does seem like Cobra Kai can be played with a Nintendo 64 controller, even if a few commands are missing. The Pokemon Sinnoh remakes, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Pokemon Shining Pearl, are also a little weird with the Nintendo 64 controller. Gameplay-wise, they function just fine. You can move around, talk to people, battle Pokemon, the core concepts of the game all work, but you can't open your menu. The Start button on the Nintendo 64 controller opens up your quick menu for certain items. Your main menu is through the X button. This means you can't do things like check your Pokemon, use items in your bag, or even save your game, at least when you're out in the field. The game does autosave at times, but I don't consider that to be very reliable. Certain battle commands like the Quick Throw or Move Summary also use the X and Y buttons, but they can be worked around. I also loaded up my save file from the Nuzlocke run I did, linked below to that playlist as well, and decided it was a good idea to enter the underground cave area. For the most part, it worked fine. I can mine stuff just as well as the rest of them, but then I found out I can't leave. You can only exit the cave by pressing the Y button, so I guess I'm just stuck down here. I suppose it is possible to play the Pokemon Sinnoh remix with the N64 controller. You just have to play through the entire game in one sitting, and also avoid the cave. Super Mario Bros. Wonder plays like any other Super Mario Bros. Game. You can jump, run, shoot fireballs, pick up objects, and more. Except with the N64 controller, you can't do any of that. Well, you can jump, but that's it. Because of the way the Switch controllers are set up, B is the jump button and the A button is nothing. The Y button is what you would use to run and use flower abilities, so it can only move around at a nice jogging pace. We also lose the very important emotes, which is just a travesty. I did find one workaround though, as the R button to spin jump can also use flower abilities if you have them, though it is a bit awkward to hit things with. I honestly couldn't remember what button was used to activate badges. I played through the entire game without using them, linked to that playlist below too, so I was thinking you have to use the X button. But it's also through the R button, which means badges can be used. You just can't change them manually until you get to the badge houses, in which case you're just stuck with whatever one it gives you. I'm considering Super Mario Bros. Wonder as fully playable. You just have to play the levels at a walking speed only. This will make most of the later levels challenging, so it's a test for the most skilled players. I recently finished my first playthrough of Zelda Chronicles Definitive Edition, and I had a great time with it. It took some time to get used to the combat, but it's an impressive story with an incredible world and cast of characters. But can it be played with a Nintendo 64 controller? Yes, actually. The two major focuses, combat and exploration, work just fine. The game rarely makes use of the X and Y buttons. In fact, the only thing you can't do is load the party menu. What this means is you cannot swap party members or gear at all until you reach certain points in the story. It sounds like an interesting challenge where you're limited only to what party members start with. There may be some side things that require the additional buttons, but overall Zelda Chronicles is fully playable with the Nintendo 64 controller. I do also have Zelda Chronicles X Definitive Edition, but I'm not ready to plug that into my system yet. I'm looking to stream that for the first time soon, so do go follow me on Twitch if you want to see me play it. Link down below there as well. But based on what I can remember from my time with the Wii U version, some menus, weapon swapping, and some optional commands require the use of X or Y buttons or the thumbstick buttons, and that's probably a similar case for Xenoblades 2 and 3 as well. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition isn't much the same boat as Age of Calamity. X and Y are your attacking buttons, so all Link can do is just stand there and get hit. It's looking like Definitive Edition is going the same way as Age of Calamity, or at least that would be the case if it wasn't for something it has that Age of Calamity doesn't. A way to change your controls. Definitive Edition lets you change between 3 different control settings. 2 of them are preset Warriors or Zelda themed setups. Neither of these help us out here, so the third option is to just assign the controls yourself. If you assign the controls in a certain way, Hyrule Warriors becomes playable, but you do lose out on some controls. I chose to disable dodging and focus spirit. Now we can take down enemies with no problem. The only thing I was worried about going into this was some object interactions such as treasure chests, which are normally opened with the Y button. But no, that command is just whatever the basic attack button is, which in this case is my B button. Because of this, the story mode for Hyrule Warriors is fully playable. Adventure mode is a different problem though. Regardless of how you have your controls set up, the menu commands overall are still the same. This means you can't use any of your search items. In most cases, this wasn't much of an issue, you just miss out on most rewards. But there are tiles where you need to use an item to progress or make the enemy appear. You can probably get around most of these, but some maps require these in order to move on. So adventure mode is hit and miss. The Fire Emblem games have always been relatively simple to play. Maybe not to understand sometimes, but to play. Three Houses adds plenty of new things to Fire Emblem, for better or worse, but it still retains the classic gameplay in during battle. Move unit, select weapon, select bad guy, kill bad guy, simple. Newer games also let you select your weapon while you're looking at the battle menu to judge the different statistics. However, that is handled by the X and Y buttons here, which means we can't do that. We also are not capable of viewing unit details, at least during battle maps, and that is also handled by the X button. It's mostly menu stuff that uses the X and Y buttons, which can either be worked around or ignored. So I'll say Fire Emblem Three Houses is playable with the N64 controller, you just may have to work around some things. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle is mostly the same way. You can still explore and fight with no issues, and Beepo's special commands are all through the A button. Really the only things you can't do are some quality of life options. Things like ending your turn early, fast forwarding the enemy turn, or getting extra health before a battle starts are completely locked out to us. So as long as you're willing to take things slow, Mario plus Rabbids is fully playable with the N64 controller. The Mario Party series is one of the easiest series to get into, but also one that becomes very competitive.
I'm gonna warp.
You're 8 away. You're 8
warp.
away.
Hopefully I afford the star.
G-Man.
I know, I'm not trying to buy them on See, G-Man.
I hate you!
That didn't work at all!
You were literally 8 away from the star. Why did you have to do that?
I wanted to avoid the star, and now
And now you rolled a 1 for insult to injury. That's funny.
Super Mario Party Jamboree is the most recent in the series to come out. You can play the party boards just fine with the N64 controller, though you won't be able to view the map during most of the text prompts. However, several minigames do use all 4 face buttons, which means you'll only be limited to A or right, and B or down in these minigames. Motion control minigames obviously do not work. Mario Party Superstars works much the same way. Board play works just fine aside from the map viewing, but there's only a handful of minigames that use all 4 face buttons in this one, which means more of Superstars can be played over Jamboree, but they, and presumably the first Super Mario Party, work just fine with an N64 controller outside of motion controls and most minigames.
Woohoo! Here we go!
These next few games are fully playable with the Nintendo 64 controller, with it having no real negative impact on the gameplay. The Mario Kart series has always kept things simple, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is no different. In fact, with the N64 controller, it's kinda like playing an HD Mario Kart 64. The controls are exactly the same. The X and Y buttons are not required to play the game at all, though you do lose out on being able to look backwards, which again is not necessary. However, you do lose the ability to change your character and send messages while in the online waiting room, which is fine. It's like I'm back in the Wii U days, just with slower connection timer for some reason. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate also translates well to the N64 controller. With the standard control settings, it is a bit wonky when it comes to things like jumping and grabbing. Of course, you can change this to be something more suitable, like using the C buttons to jump instead. There are some menu actions you can't do, but those can be worked around. Super Smash Bros. Is 100% playable with the N64 controller. Another game I had yet to play before making this video is Yoshi's Crafted World. The game box tells us the X button is used to throw eggs, which already presents a problem. Luckily, the R button comes to our rescue again, with it taking the place of the X button. I only cleared the first level since I'm saving the rest of the game for later, but the Yoshi's Island series isn't too complex with its controls. So if there's something I have to use the X button for, I'll find out later. But from what I can tell, you can absolutely play Crafted World with the N64 controller.
This last game we have to cover is actually pretty surprising in terms of how well it works with the Nintendo 64 controller. Splatoon 2.
I've only played a little bit of Splatoon. The only times I've played is that pre-launch demo the Wii U had for the original Splatoon, and then one level of Splatoon 2's story mode. I've never jumped into an online match. I wasn't sure how well Splatoon 2 would work with an N64 controller going into this, as I knew the game uses motion controls, which apparently the N64 controller just locks into a top-down perspective. I decided to just throw myself into the deep end and join an online match. I did find the settings menu that allowed me to turn off motion controls, so hey, we're no longer looking at the ground. With things set up appropriately, it's time to start my first online match. Apparently I did do an online match at some point. I certainly don't remember doing so, but I seem to have left in the middle of that battle. So, sorry to whoever was playing with me between now and 3 years ago. The game still let me play anyway, so I tried again. I was surprised to still see people playing this game. I thought they would have moved on to Splatoon 3, and I would have to settle for playing through story mode. But nope, we got a full team of people here. I hope they're prepared to be disappointed. Surprisingly, the N64 controller actually works, though it is a little awkward. The main way to shoot ink is with the ZR button, which is this tiny button on the back of the controller. Otherwise, we are fully capable of jumping, diving, and throwing bombs. I'm not very good at shooting games, so I try to stay out of the action and do my best to cover as much turf as I could. It wasn't long before we were all engaged in a battle though, and I had someone coming after me. Luckily, Dr. Leto came to my rescue. Despite my complete lack of experience and coordination, we were able to pull off a win by a pretty large margin. Good job, guys. I'll never see you again.
Hello everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. I do really appreciate it. This actually wasn't the video I meant to put out this month. I was working on a different video for Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Chaos Edition run that I did over on Twitch, but that wasn't coming together as well as I wanted it to, so I wanted to put something different, put together a bit fun, I don't know. Something different that I don't normally do on this channel. I am streaming games over on Twitch. As of right now, I am still streaming Iron Mario 64, and I'm streaming through the Super Mario Advance games as part of the Super Smash Bros. Adventure that I have myself going on. We're going to be playing at least one game for every character in the Super Smash Bros. Series. We are starting off with Mario, of course. I also mentioned in the video that I haven't started Zelda Chronicles X Definitive Edition yet. Where is it? The games are still on the floor here. Hold on. I'm going to play this game on Twitch for the first time, so definitely do go follow me there if you want to see my adventures here. Anyway, I mentioned a lot of things, so definitely go check out the links below. It links to my previous playlists of previous playthroughs I've done. That was a lot of P words. I was struggling there. It also links to my Twitch, my Twitter, my Blue Sky, I think it is, maybe. It also links to my brother's books, he's trying really hard to get them out. Definitely go check those out. And my dad's podcast is also linked down there as well. This is Tucker. He likes when you subscribe. Until next time, my name is Alex. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you around. You have a good one. I gotta pick all the games up now.